Through the concrete cracks worn weary by work boots and high heels, through the concrete cracks showered in tears of sorrow, tears of joy, through the concrete cracks rumbled by reverberations of 100 years, a flower on the hill takes its first breath, and a grand hope springs. Welcome to the Spring Street podcast at the intersection of creation and destruction in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. And now, a word from the sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by Starship Kairos, a podcast studio available for bookings in downtown Los Angeles. Starship Kairos is where my guests and I make this show happen. Soundproofed, cozy, and equipped with professional audio gear, Starship Kairos is an ideal location for any type of podcast. Starship Kairos offers a full suite of services including content consultation, mixing and mastering, and custom jingle writing. For rates and booking, check them out on Instagram at Starship Kairos or click on the link in the description. And now, let's dive in. Drew, we're live.
Sheldon.
On the Spring Street podcast.
Stoked to be here. Thanks
Cheers,
for having
man.
me.
Dude.
Cheers. Water cheers.
Yeah, that's bad luck, right?
I just heard that recently, yeah.
Well,
But we're doing it anyway.
maybe if we knock on wood, it cancels out. Dude, I'm very excited to have you on the show. I'm excited to talk about music. I'm excited to talk about your upcoming tour, maybe a little bit about your journey from the East Coast to the West Coast as a musician, but also as somebody who works in film, and then also too about some of your thoughts on the struggle, being a musician and that grind, and
Sure.
what it takes to be a musician. But I think that maybe the best place to start is at the beginning. So where did your musical journey start?
All right. So let's see. I think my musical journey started via my cousin. I have an older cousin who played in a touring band for a while. And he's about 9 years older than me. And when I was a kid, I remember going up to his house one summer and seeing that I think he had a bass guitar in his closet. He had just started playing, and I think like as a kid, you're always like looking up to the older person in your family who does all the cool stuff or whatever. And so it was probably through him. I remember being like 7 and him showing me Green Day and 7 Seconds and
Sick.
Screeching Weasel and like a bunch of punk bands and stuff.
Yeah.
And I specifically remember him giving me, it was either him or his friend gave me a CD by this band called Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. Do you know them?
No.
It's I believe it was like a super group between like NoFX, Lagwagon members, like old like 90s skate punk kind of stuff. And they would do covers of like Billy Joel songs, and there's like an Elton John cover. And so the CD he gave me was like a compilation of all these like covers of like 60s and 70s songs that were like punk versions basically.
Sick.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That kind of reminds me of those Pop Goes Punk albums.
Yeah, it was like an early version of that, I guess you could say.
Sick.
So yeah, I was probably like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or something like that. Yeah, just, got exposed to, that kind of music, I guess, when I was pretty young. And
Was your first instrument bass?
my first instrument I played was guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually just picked up bass a couple of years ago.
Nice.
After playing guitar for many years. But so yeah, I would say it was through my cousin, and he went on to play in bands, and then I kind of followed in his footsteps, and through him showing me music as I got older, got into metal and punk and hardcore and all the offshoots of that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
started playing in my own bands when I was started like writing music to play in bands in high school, but didn't really make a push for it until I got to college.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the origins of my music career, I guess.
as far as hardcore music goes, what were you listening to in that high school era of your life?
High school, I was listening to couple. I would say the biggest bands were, there's a band called Lifetime, Lifetime, Bouncing Souls, Hot Water Music, American Nightmare, a lot of like Boston hardcore type stuff.
Interesting.
Not like tough guy hardcore, like super heavy aggro stuff, but I like some of that too, I guess. But yeah, and then there were random offshoots, alt rock things and poppier stuff, and but I'd say that's mostly what I listened to around that time, was like a lot of fast sort of skate punky type bands. And
interesting.
Yeah.
So were you not as much in like that Warped Tour kind of scene, or were those bands involved in Warped Tour at the time?
The bands I just mentioned, probably not so much. But I think at that point in my life, I gravitated more towards bands that would have played Warped Tour like when it first started.
Okay.
Like mentioning them again, like NoFX, Lagwagon, that kind of stuff, where stuff that would have been on like the early like Tony Hawk soundtracks and stuff like that.
Sick.
But yeah, I mean, I went to Warped Tour. Probably, I think I went in like 2009 and saw a handful of bands that I was into. So it was only time I ever went actually was that year. So.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I went in. Actually, I probably went in 2010, 2011. It could have even been 2012 too, because it was later in the game. I only went once to Warped Tour. But all of those bands pretty much were ones that I was obsessed with in high school. And it was a lot of like Devil Wears Parada, Asking Alexandria, We Came as Romans, of Mice and Men.
I remember all those,
That kind of scene.
Yeah.
But it's funny too, you talking about getting that CD from your cousin. I had a similar experience from my cousin actually. And I think it's always fascinating, these outside influences that like in one moment it totally sets you on a path.
Yeah.
Musically, because when you're a kid and you've just never heard anything, and then somebody hands you a CD and you're like, wow, I've never heard sounds like this before. It's just the craziest thing.
Yeah, like absolutely. It's like hearing like, overdriven guitar for the first time and being like, what is this? This is the coolest thing.
Totally.
Like you're saying, like the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like actually, I should say this. I think like maybe or right around that time, maybe a little bit before that, I do remember like my mom showing me "Immigrant Song" by Led Zeppelin. And,
really?
Like, blasting like Led Zeppelin 3 in the house, and
That's funny.
I think I was probably in like kindergarten.
Wow.
Yeah, my parents are like huge Zeppelin fans, and
dude, I have like the literal opposite version of that story. I remember playing that song on my computer.
Yeah.
And let's just say my mom is not a fan of Led Zeppelin.
Sure.
I won't throw her under the bus. It's kind of a funny story, but she was not stoked that I was playing that song on the computer.
Yeah.
Very opposite.
That's so funny.
Reaction. But that CD that my cousin gave me, it was a CD he had burned, and it had Good Charlotte, Green Day, The Killers, just these like iconic bands at the time, and these iconic songs. It had Mr. Brightside.
So this is probably like 2004, 2005 probably.
When he gave me this CD, I was in either 4th grade or 5th grade.
Yeah.
It had Mr. Brightside.
That is,
it had
Mr. Brightside, I think, is like one of the best songs of the last 20 years for sure.
Incredible.
Great song.
Incredible. Yeah. I want to say it had, what did it have from Green Day? I think it had American Idiot. And then from Good Charlotte, is it the Anthem?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
I remember getting that CD in probably around the same time. So I think we're similar in age, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm turning 30 this year.
Yeah. So I'm 31. So
there we go, man.
Yeah,
so,
I remember buying that CD and yeah, it has like, I don't know. I always have found Good Charlotte to be, kind of corny. However, at the time, like totally. I actually like I'm a big fan of the producer who mixed that record, Eric Valentine, who's done like the early Third Eye Blind stuff, and
interesting.
Grace Potter, I think that's her name. What else is he's done a ton of other stuff. He did Queens of the Stone Age too. Some of their stuff.
Sick. I actually really love Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah.
Which, funny story, the only reason why I knew Queens of the Stone Age was from playing Need for Speed. And I think
Need for Speed Underground, or which one?
I think it was Need for Speed Underground 2. I played that game so much.
Yeah.
Most of my music education came from video games.
Dude, that's awesome. And I think there's a lot of people our age that have that similar experience. Like I mentioned like the Tony Hawk soundtrack thing earlier.
Dude,
like
Tony Hawk Underground 2, Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Those games, like all of the like early 2000s extreme sports movement, like the music that would be on like 411 VM videos and like video games, and like that culture was, I think, definitely influenced a lot of like the musical taste of, kids our age, for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking about this with somebody either today or yesterday, talking about Guitar Hero and Rock Band.
Yeah.
And how, I learned so much music just from Guitar Hero, like music that I might not have been exposed to in my household. Or I might have, my dad, like we listened to a lot of classic rock with my dad, but it was just a different, like, I remember playing Knights of Sidonia
and being like
obsessed about Muse, like, and I wouldn't have learned that from my dad because that's not classic rock.
Yeah.
So it was like such a breadth of music, and getting introduced to people like Tom Morello and Slash. But what a cool thing for our generation to have had, like these video games that is a video game and you're just playing and having fun, but it's also exposing you and teaching you about this world of music and allowing you as a kid to be inspired by it and be immersed into it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like, I don't know, my dad always talks about like, when he was a kid, he'd get like the new Elton John record, right? Mm-hmm. Or like maybe that's not the best. There's another story he told me once where he was like, he would he'd get records from these bands he had didn't really know anything about, but he had just heard a song on the radio or something, and like he'd get the record in and like open it up and like look at all the photos of the band, and just having this experience of like none of my friends even knew what these band members looked like, let alone what the other songs were or like what the whole vibe was. But it's just interesting hearing about like them being introduced to music in just such a different way, I think, than our generation was.
It's transformed every decade, and probably now it's transforming even faster than that. I mean, if we're thinking about our parents getting records and opening up the record and seeing whatever it was that artist chose to put in the record, and that's kind of all you get.
Yeah.
And then for us, it was kind of the advent of Facebook and MySpace and Instagram. Now you're getting to see like more into people's lives. Now, it's almost kind of the reverse, where it feels like you have to blow up on TikTok, and you blow up on TikTok through showing your life. Like, it's not even necessarily about the music. It's like, you make some really weird joke or a funny skit or just something, and it's really like you like just, and it's just a different way of interacting with an artist, and then it's probably going to be different 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Let alone if we're thinking about what's music like in 50 years. Like, man.
Yeah.
I have no idea how to even fathom that.
Totally. It's I don't know. I think it's just, I don't know, it's interesting in so many different ways. Like, on one hand, I think it's like, you're a musician as well. I'm sure you could argue like in some ways it's fascinating, it's frustrating maybe depending on how you look at it, but it's also like, you just got to roll with the times and and kind of follow suit to some degree of like what the new method is for getting music out, or like
Totally.
you know what I mean. And it changes every X amount of years. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's I think we're gonna start seeing, like you're saying, like in 5 years it could be something totally different. I think.
Yeah. Getting back to our timeline here, so from high school going into college, you said you started taking music more seriously.
Yeah.
So did you end up finishing college? What did that part of your life look like?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I grew up in New Jersey, and then went to school in Vermont. And
What were you studying there?
in Vermont, I was studying. I went to be an art major, and then took a photo class on a whim that I almost actually like completely switched my schedule to not have the class in my schedule, but with just not canceling the class, but like can't think of the words right now. You can edit this part out.
Withdrawing?
Yeah, I almost ended up like I stayed in the art program, but I almost ended up being like, this class is not for me.
Yeah.
And well, I'll get to that later, I guess. But yeah, I did end up finishing college. And there was a small. I went to school in Burlington, Vermont.
Okay.
And it's closed now, but there used to be a venue there called 242 Main that at one point was the longest running all ages venue in the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a shame that it closed down.
Yeah. It's
Was it over COVID that it closed down?
It might have been. I'm trying to remember
I feel
now.
like COVID was just a nail in the coffin.
Yeah, honestly.
So many businesses.
Yeah, I think it was
sad.
It was kind of on its way out already, but I'll have to like look back and see.
All right, well, someone's got to bring it back. 242?
242 Main. Like,
man, bring back 242 Main.
Yeah, kind of like it was just really cool. It's kind of modeled after like a teen center, like a European teen center kind of thing.
What I don't actually know what that is, a European teen center.
From what I've read and gathered is basically like there were these sort of like you walk into 242 and it feels like it could be like a dive bar venue, but there's no bar. So it's like they would do like teen
We got
activities.
Capri Suns, guys.
Yeah. There would be like teen activities and things that like recreational activities and things like that. But a lot of, again, someone is probably way more knowledgeable about this than I am because it's not like I'm from Europe or anything. But I've read that 242 Main was sort of built with that logic in mind. So yeah, it's like this all ages punk venue.
Yeah.
And I went to see a show there like within the first 2 weeks of being in school. This was probably like fall of 2010.
When did you graduate? 2010?
2014.
No, high school.
Oh, high school? Yeah, 2010. Yeah.
Okay, so you're about to turn 32 then.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like trying to put it together. I'm like, how? I didn't go to college till 2012.
Yeah.
You were a couple grades ahead of me.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I just started going to shows there and like meeting kids, and there were like people that weren't, and a lot of the people that were going to shows there were just dudes and chicks who just grew up in Burlington going to shows. So then at some point there, just started meeting friends, playing in bands. And then I stuck around for like an extra year after school, kept playing in bands. And then ended up...
And you finished your degree in art?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, in conjunction, like while I was playing music there, I put that photo class on my schedule. It was a black and white, like intro to photography, all
Cool.
darkroom course. So the school I went to still had a darkroom there. So
incredible. Got
to learn, film development and everything. And I just in the beginning I was like, this feels so daunting, and I just got overwhelmed, I guess, and I almost bailed from the class altogether. And I remember calling my dad that night and being like, I don't know if this is right for me, and he convinced me to just go for it and not worry about it too much. And that was probably one of the most important phone calls I think I've had in life, because since then, I don't know what it was, but right after that, I just completely fell in love with photo. So ended up working in the darkroom a lot. And music and photo were like, still to this day, but from then on, we're pretty much like the two big forces in my life.
Nice. So after you graduated, how long did you stay in Vermont for?
Like 1 year, I think.
Okay.
And then, I stayed around for 1 year. And was pretty much just fucking sick of the winters, honestly. And
it's pretty much Canada.
Yeah.
Living in Vermont.
Literally, yeah. It's like an hour and a half from the border. So,
wow.
Or something like that. And, I think at the time I was like I worked at, like after I finished school, I was working part-time at the darkroom at the school, and then also at a screen printing company, catching shirts off the dryer, and I would take 2 buses to get there. And I remember, I remember one day just, because it was like in the middle of the winter there. It's like a regular everyday occurrence where you just walk outside in the morning and you can feel your nostril hairs like freeze together, and like your hair like literally freezing if you just got out of the shower.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I remember one day just being like, I'm fucking done with this.
Yeah.
And around the same time, I had been playing music and with a couple people that were like, we were all really taking it pretty seriously. 2 of my friends, Matt St. Chalet and Kevin Savage, were playing together with our friend Charlie and Travis and Brandon, and we're doing the thing, and 3 of us decided to move to Richmond, Virginia, to start another band with some mutual friends of Kevin's. That ended up being my time in Burlington. So that was 2015 of June of 2015 is when I left and started the next chapter of pushing music, I guess.
Do you feel like the music scene on the East Coast? This is a big question.
Let's do it.
Heads up.
Fucking here we go.
Do you feel like the music scene on the East Coast, or maybe in like the Northeast region, is more vibrant, or maybe a better way to say it is more accessible than out here? And the reason why I ask this is because in my experience, I've been on a couple tours that were house show tours.
Yeah.
But I just felt like there was this incredible underground, thriving kind of like house show punk scene throughout the Midwest into the East Coast. That just blew my mind. I'm curious if you felt anything similar in your time out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I definitely would agree. I do think that kind of thing, there is a history of that happening in California for sure. And all over the US too. But it is very vibrant on the East Coast for sure. And specifically it seems like in the Northeast.
Did you go to many house shows?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Played a bunch, gone to a bunch. That was like...
What was your first exposure to house shows? Like, when did you first discover what a house show was?
It's probably in high school. I hadn't actually gone to... Actually, no. In high school, this maybe would be my first one. It was interesting. It was kind of a house show, but it was outside.
Yeah? Hey, I've been to many of those.
So me and a couple friends got tickets to go see what bands? It was we were kind of into we were into hardcore, but we also in high school kind of listened to Blink-182 sounding stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we had tickets to go see this. Who was it? It was a band called Man Overboard.
Mm-hmm.
A band called, I think it was this band called FLS, which ended up becoming Forever Losing Sleep. I don't know if they're even still active anymore. These like New Jersey kind of pop punky bands.
Yeah.
There's another band. I think they were called True Things. Anyway, we had tickets to go see them at like a VFW somewhere in New Jersey, and halfway
A VFW?
Yeah, like a Veterans of Foreign War.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of shows in the Northeast that would happen at these like
lodges, kind of.
Yeah, where it's
interesting,
or like it feels like a banquet hall. Like you just walk in and it's just like an empty room with a bar that no one's really running, depending on the day.
Interesting.
And most of these hardcore shows that I've been to that at venues like that, it's just like, you just, I don't know. It's like it was kind of like the step up from a house show, but it wasn't a venue. But they had like a stage. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Or a lot of times it'd be like you just play on the floor.
Yeah.
Which is, that's we'll get
hardcore,
there.
Man.
Yeah. It was
I
awesome.
love that.
Some of my favorite. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here, but yeah. So we're driving down to go to the show, and my friend Greg Howard, who I played in bands with when I was a kid, he's a great friend of mine that lives in New York now, and he's sitting shotgun, and we were all in this like Facebook group with like a bunch of like punk musician kids that we just talk about shows and new records coming out and stuff like that. And a couple people were going to go to the show, and someone posted like, hey, the promoter fucked up and double booked the show. So we're trying to figure out where to move it to. And there must have been a long thread or something. And some girl goes, hey, the show's happening in my driveway now. And we're like, whoa, okay, cool. Yeah. So I wish I could remember where in New Jersey it was, but it was somewhere like towards like Asbury Park. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if do you know Asbury Park? It's like,
no, I don't know New Jersey very well.
Asbury Park is like, has a pretty legendary venue called the Stone Pony. And another one called Asbury Lanes, which was a bowling alley that would do shows. Like Bruce Springsteen like played a lot of his early shows in that town, and
wow.
Like Gaslight Anthem is from there, if you know them. But at least I think they are. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, so we get to the show, and it's like 300 kids on this person's lawn. And
no way.
And Man Overboard, who was like gaining traction at the time, and was like pretty well known in that music scene, like played like on this like family's driveway to like 100 people or 300 people or something like that. And it was fucking packed.
Wow.
And that might have been like my first like house show.
Yeah. And you said you were in high school at the time.
Yeah, I think I was like 18. So I would have been like a senior in high school or something like that. I mean, after that, like, funny enough, like, so in high school, like, I didn't really go to a lot of shows just because I didn't really know that many kids that listened to the same kind of stuff I did. Mm-hmm. But then when I got to college, it was, in Burlington, it was a mix of going to shows at that venue 242 Main, and, we had some friends that had a house downtown that would do shows, like packed house shows on New Year's, and that my bands at the time had played. Like I lived in a punk house at one time that did shows in our basement for a couple months. That was a blast. Way. Yeah.
What made it a punk house?
I don't know. It's just kind of like a term that gets thrown around. Like you live with dudes who are in punk and hardcore bands or into it, and it's a disgusting place.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sounds like a punk house.
Yeah, great times.
You're playing shows in the basement. Everyone's in a punk or hardcore band.
Just like 40s constantly going around and hanging out and just
sounds
playing
like a
music
punk house.
and like, just partying constantly and
Sweet.
it's good times. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. So when was the first time that you went on tour?
First time I went on tour actually was a lot later than I was hoping. Like I like had wanted to tour as early as like 16, but again, it was like I hadn't really known people to do it with, or like, didn't really have the ability to just go out and do it.
Yeah.
The first time I would say I did, like in college, I played in this band called Iron Sword. That was like a sort of like stoner rock band. We would do some weekends. Like I wouldn't really call them tours. So like aside from that, the first tour I did was with my current band Shiloh, but was actually I was just going on tour to like shoot photo and video for them.
Oh, interesting.
So this was like before I had joined the band. So I had like.
So what year did you start doing photo and video for Shiloh?
I think it was 2017.
Okay.
Summer of 2017. And I had just sort of quit a band that I had been doing and ran into my friend Greg, who plays in Shiloh, at a show in Richmond. And I was just kind of like feeling some kind of way and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And he was like, we're going on tour, in a couple weeks. And I think I was just kind of drunk and was like, hey, do you need a photographer for this tour? I'll just come do it. I don't like, they didn't pay me or anything. I was just like, I just want to go on tour and hang out and like clear
That's
my
what
head.
Every musician loves to hear, man.
Yeah. And he was like, I guess so. And I was like, cool. Like,
wow.
So I went out with like some like old Pentax 35mm camera I had and my iPhone, and ended up like shooting a lot of video on the iPhone.
Wow.
It's like an iPhone 6 or something.
Wow.
That was like the first tour I did but the first proper tour I did as a musician was a couple years later. I ended up joining the band and we went to Europe for like 2 weeks.
Dang. So your first tour was a European tour.
Yeah.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah. It was a great time. It was like, it kind of felt really cool because I'd been wanting to tour for so long at that point. I mean, at that point it was like wanting, I had wanted to tour for about like 10 years.
Wow. So
the first one was cool because, I had never been to Europe either. So it was.
Dang, man. What was your first stop?
Of Europe or the whole thing?
What was your first show on that tour?
The first show of the tour was in Copenhagen at a venue called Vega, I believe. We opened for this band called Brutus, this Belgian band Brutus that, if you don't know them, you should check them out. They're incredible. 3-piece, female fronted, but she sings and drums.
Oh, wow.
And like
I've always been so impressed by anybody who can sing a drum.
Yeah, she's
it's so hard for me to fathom.
She's really good. Like,
wow.
It's like, I don't know. I always love watching drummers from like their kind of music is sort of like an upbeat kind of punky hardcore thing, and she hits like incredibly hard and consistently, and then like singing on top of it, like she has like very insane range too. It's not just like monotone singing. It's like, how are you singing and playing drums? And like, I can't play drums, nor can I sing. I can't even imagine doing both at the same time. But she's real good. Anyway, so we, that was the first show, and I loved it. I remember getting there and being like, I kind of like this way more than America, to be honest.
I've heard a lot of musicians have incredible experiences touring in Europe.
Yeah. The hospitality in Europe, there is an appreciation for DIY music and musicians who aren't, super blown up.
Mm-hmm.
That does not, there's an appreciation for that just doesn't really exist in the US, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but
Mm-hmm.
The band I play in now called Shiloh, we are pretty small, and the band had toured there once or twice before, I believe, before I was in the band.
Mm-hmm.
But even when we went over, we were pretty unknown. So it was amazing to go to these shows, and then, the people that would offer to put us up that, Greg had kind of coordinated things with ahead of time, or I think some of it, which always kind of happens. Some of it happens day of too.
Wow. In terms of places where you're going to stay for the night?
It depends. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
not so much anymore for us because we have a booking agent now who kind of helps with all that. But
Got it.
yeah, it was not so long ago that we were, I should say they were, because I wasn't really in the band
Mm-hmm.
too much before we had an agent, but where, yeah, you just a band comes through if you're booking the show or you're there, and they're like, hey, can we stay with anyone tonight? and wait, I remember putting people up once or twice who were,
Wow.
doing that, back in Burlington. If it wasn't even a show I'd be booking, but maybe it didn't happen a lot, but
Yeah.
a friend of the person booking would be like, hey, this band needs a place to crash. They're cool. Can you hook it up?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
On that first tour in Europe,
mhm.
you guys were staying in people's homes for the most part?
Yes, we were, if I'm remembering right. Most of it was that. And
Wow.
yeah, so anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. I easily get derailed.
I derailed you there, so
no,
that's my
you're-
bad.
No, you're totally fine. Yeah, so the just the hospitality is just kind of next level there.
Mhm.
And I remember we played this little tiny cafe in Norway, and some remote town in Norway. And we meet the guy booking the show, and they're probably only I don't know, 40 people at the show. It's this little cafe that had a stage upstairs.
Mhm.
And we get there, and he's like, oh yeah, so I made us dinner coming upstairs to my apartment. And we get up there, and he's just cooked us this really great meal. I unfortunately don't remember what it was, but it was very good.
Yeah.
Had wine for us, had he wanted to get to know us. His friend came over, and he was like, oh yeah, and by the way, I also built this apartment years ago for bands to stay in right next door.
Wow.
Which is no slight to any people who are trying to book DIY shows in the US or anything like that, but
but if you haven't built an apartment for the band to stay, are you really doing it?
Not to sound like a diva or anything, we needed that, but it was very nice to go from we all came up sort of around the even as someone who hadn't toured that much in the US
Mhm.
prior to this, I was very familiar with the culture of because I would see it come through Burlington, and of DIY touring bands would come through, and then it would usually be a thing where we would be let's hang out and go get pizza and drink beer, and you can crash on our floor,
Mhm.
and which is also super nice and very, very helpful too.
Yeah.
But to know that people were kind of going the extra mile over there was something I wasn't expecting at all.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool. I remember that show specifically, seeing a couple people who were probably in their 50s coming out to the show. And
Mhm.
not that you don't see that in the US, but for the type of music we play, it's pretty uncommon. Our genre is kind of the age demographic, I would say, is probably, mid 20s to 40s in the US.
Yeah. And for people who aren't familiar, do you want to say what your genre is?
Yeah, we kind of play a mix of post rock and post metal music.
Mhm.
It's all instrumental. if you've listened to bands like Russian Circles or Explosions in the Sky or Mono or Mogwai, it's sort of in that territory. So it's kind of a mix of kind of heavy metallic riffs.
Yeah.
Not so much in like a Slayer metal way, but just kind of in like a, I don't know. I guess.
You know what your guys' music reminded me of a little bit? I was listening on the way to pick you up today, and the first track that I listened to was the most popular track. I want to say it's called, it's a funny kind of word. Let me just pull
Helioentropy.
Yes,
I think. Yeah.
Helioentropy.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of Mariana's Trench by August Burns Red.
Okay, sure.
Like that riff in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's definitely different, but the kind of combination of like melodic but also heavy, it reminded me a lot of that.
Sure, yeah.
I really was digging it. I really like the stuff that you guys do.
Oh, thanks, man.
So,
I appreciate you checking it out.
Yeah, 100%. But what you were saying is that in Europe, you were surprised that people of kind of an older demographic were still coming out to see this like instrumental, post-hardcore kind of
totally, and like
melodic rock music.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't know. I think maybe even what surprised me more was, not so much the genre that we were playing. Even I guess I kind of said that earlier, but thinking about it now, as you framed it that way, it's like seeing, even though the hospitality at these shows were good, like they were still like arguably like DIY shows. So seeing like older folks come out to shows like that was really cool.
Yeah.
And something I hadn't really experienced in the US. For whatever reason, I don't know.
Yeah.
There just seems to be more of an appreciation for new music among older people there too, which was just like refreshing to see.
Yeah.
And kind of, you know, we will wonder like why is it not the same in the US? And I'm not really sure why that is, but
I've heard this from other musicians. I've heard them say, and from my experience, it's mostly people who are in like the indie folk scene, especially Canadian indie folk artists. They'll say that in Europe it's just way better for touring than Canada or the US. And I haven't toured in Europe yet, so I can't speak from experience. I've played in Europe, and maybe the tiniest bit of experience that I have is like busking. I busked in Europe, and people were super generous. The most recent time was last year. I was in Switzerland. I was there for a wedding. I was playing music at a wedding.
That rules.
And dude, it was incredible.
Yeah.
But there were a couple days where I just went out on the bridge and pulled up my guitar, and I was like, I got to practice for this wedding. So I might as well practice on this bridge and busk. And people were super generous. I made like 60 francs at least one of the days. It might have been about 60 francs both days.
60 hot dogs?
Yeah. I could buy way more than 60 hot dogs with 60 francs. But I only played for like an hour and a half. I was like, man, 60 francs. I'm set for the day. You know, I got my hotel. Like that's already on lockdown. So I got enough money to go out and get food.
Yeah.
Maybe do something fun.
Yeah.
Get some drinks. It's great.
Yeah, it's great.
But
Switzerland's awesome.
Same thing with when I was in London. This is even longer ago. I was 20 and I was busking in the Tube. And I didn't know that you needed a permit. Or maybe I did, and I was like, fuck it, I'll just give it a shot.
Sure.
And so I busked for about 10 minutes in the Tube before I got kicked out. And I made about 10 pounds in 10 minutes, which was not a bad rate, you know? And what I noticed is that people would walk by and they wouldn't even listen. They would just throw in a pound into my case.
That's what I mean. It's
because it was just part of their culture. It was like, this guy's in here performing, boom, what's a pound out of my wallet to throw to this guy?
Right.
And there's so many people that it's like, wow, you can actually, this could be a thing. You can actually make a decent amount of money.
Yeah. And it's I don't know all the like nitty gritty of how this works, but I have heard too that um bands will get like grants from like government grants
In
to
Canada.
tour and Canada too. Okay.
Canada's. I got one.
Wow.
Actually.
Tell me more about this. Yeah.
Well, I was super lucky, man. I had a manager at the time who was very savvy. Well, actually, I should say this. She was very ambitious. She was young. She was just ready to sink her teeth into something. And I was her first artist. And
Cool.
so I didn't even know about the grants. And she was like, yeah, you can get a grant. Like, you can. So she was the one who did it. And she took a little bit of the grant money for the service of like getting it. And it was a good chunk of money to do that tour.
Yeah.
And honestly, that grant was huge, a huge help.
It's wild that it like is even a thing. That's probably another thing too. Like I've heard from, I'm trying to remember what band this was, but I mean, you being from Canada, you probably know more about this, but I have heard that there was a band I knew about a couple years ago who all of their music video budgets were paid for by the government.
Wow.
And,
I think I've heard, I think in Canada you can get grants for music videos.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Incredible.
Because, going back to the TikTok thing you mentioned earlier, like we are in this interesting time now where if you're a band and you have no visual component, like good luck, because you really need that.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, at least, you really need it. But I mean, you could just go on Instagram and look around. Like if it's not some type of video content is like imperative to have.
Yeah.
But to have music videos with every release is very helpful too, and it's not cheap at all, as we know. Like,
well, and it's crazy too because now it's like you can't just have a horizontal music video. You also want to have verticals to back it up too, and you want to have them in all sorts of different kind of formats. So like you want your verticals for your reels, for your TikToks. You also want them for Spotify because you can have a vertical like a loop or some kind of visual.
Canvas, right? Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, it's fascinating because I think in a way, everything that's been happening with content creation, music, performing arts, it's kind of raising the bar in terms of it's forcing everyone to become a videographer.
Yeah.
And dude, thank God for AI. Thank God. Well, okay, let's be more specific. Thank God for like these AI integrated tools in different platforms that are really helping speed up these processes.
Dude, yeah.
Because otherwise, like, I am not a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Or an illustrator. And it's been so amazing to be able to just like literally write down something and instantly get a visual that maybe can help like bring an idea to life or use as a rendering or like all sorts of different things. Even just like the ability to like on my phone, like if I have a photo of a person, like hold your finger on the person and then it crops out the background. You know, like the fact that we can just do that instantly instead of maybe, I don't know how many years ago, but like, let's just say 2 or 3 years ago, you're going in Illustrator and you're like masking out the
sure. I like, I'm gonna be honest, like the whole AI thing, it doesn't really freak me out that much in terms of like how it's affecting art and music. Like I don't know, and like you could argue like if it's not AI, it's gonna be something else that like threatens to like take everyone's jobs away or whatever. And like sure, it's scary, like it could take my job away eventually too, or take your job away eventually, but in right now, I don't know. I just kind of find it interesting that like, and at the very least, I'm looking at it like it could get at it. Yeah, it could very easily get out of hand, but there's already AI tools in a lot of the stuff that I do anyway.
Yeah.
That I just haven't been framed or like haven't been labeled as AI. But I mean,
what would be an example of that? What would be an AI tool that you're using day to day that's just like part of the software?
Part of the software.
Because is that what you're talking about?
I guess so, yeah. Putting me on the spot now. I think, well, here's a recent one, and this might annoy some people. But
lay it on me.
Adobe just created this. I don't know all the specifics about it, but Adobe has this new thing called Firefly that I believe is like.
Okay.
Again, someone can quote me, or don't quote me on this because I don't know all the specifics. But
yeah.
I watched a video online somewhat recently about this new AI tool called Firefly that is sort of like I think it's like an umbrella tool for like all their different apps. Mm-hmm. And there's one for Premiere, their editing software, where it was like cutting a video, like it like someone had filmed like a 3-camera interview with this hiker. And shot a bunch of B-roll of her hiking and like close-ups on shoes as like on the mountain and like on the cliff and things, and like her hand like grabbing onto shit. And
does the AI like,
it was cutting it itself? It's just like they loaded all the clips in, I think, and then they just, I'm sure there was more to it than just this, but in the quick like reel I saw of it, someone hit spacebar and it was like cutting different angles. And the craziest thing I thought was, as she was saying, like, she was probably saying something like, I put my shoes on, these types of shoes on or whatever when I hike, and it was like cutting to B-roll of the shoes.
Dude.
So I don't know. I see, and I know
that's so valuable. Like, you're saving so much time, because then you can go back and you can tweak it and you can be like, well, maybe I don't want to have that cut there and like whatever. But the amount of time you probably save.
And that's the thing. It's like you would save a lot of time. I would say this, like I edited personal video projects for a while, like the last 10 years probably, and it's not that long, but it's some time. And I've personally kind of gotten a little tired of editing, so I would like that.
Yeah.
But it is taking away the art of editing, and I hope it doesn't completely what's the word? I hope it doesn't completely like eradicate like the editor's job, because I think a lot of movies and TVs, like the editing is everything outside of everything that went into the pre-production and all that stuff. But there's like, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think we'll see, everyone I think will find ways for AI to benefit their lives in some way, especially in the media industry. That's just my 2 cents. I think there will be things that people were like, oh, actually, that's pretty cool. Yeah. That would help me. But there's other things that, are scary for sure. Like, dude,
I just had a really trippy thought. So you know how styles kind of are like trends are somewhat cyclical, and it seems to be like there's this trend where we go back like 10 or 20 years to kind of recreate, like do something the way it used to be done.
Yeah.
So maybe we go back and we record on analog, we record on tape.
Yeah, sure.
Or we film on, like we shoot on actual film.
Right.
Or we listen to a record instead of a CD, or we listen to a cassette.
Yeah.
And maybe it's going to be we listen to a CD, but imagine, this is just like so wacky, Black Mirror dystopian thought bubble right here. But imagine in like an AI future where there's just like total automation. And now like AI is like full blown completing like all human tasks. Imagine if like there's some AI system that wants to go back and recreate a trend of a human being an editor. And so like the AI like somehow contacts a human and like it's like, hey, can you edit? Can you edit this like a human, and then send me your finished product?
Dude,
so that like the completed thing is.
It's not the thing. That's the crazy thing about it is like it is getting to the point where, like even hearing you say that, I'm like, yeah, that could probably happen, right? But
It's gonna be a wild world that we're walking into.
it is. But however, to your so yeah, I do want to say like, I don't know. I'm not completely for it, but I'm curious to see how it develops.
How it all plays out. Yeah.
But as you were just saying, like the whole like what do they call it, like the 20-year phenomenon or the 20-year cycle, where there's like this interest in pursuing what once was, and
yeah.
I mean, I could definitely see like this AI thing takes off, and then like the next generation of kids is like, fuck that, I want to do
Totally.
I want to like pick up an iPhone and make them, which people are doing now. But like,
I've seen kids like Gen Z kids walking around with point and shoot cameras.
That's what I mean.
The cameras that you and I disregarded as soon as we got iPhones or smartphones, and we're like, those are terrible.
Yeah.
I want to have, So yeah, and maybe.
Which the weird thing is though, is like in 20 years, like the version of that will probably be like shooting on like used iPhones from eBay or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is weird. Or even honestly, it's probably going to be like at some point it'll be DSLRs will be like the equivalent of like a Sony Cybershot or something.
That's surreal. That's so surreal to think about.
But hopefully there's a respect for all iterations of certain tools.
Yeah.
At that point. But who knows? I don't know. We'll see. We will see.
Yeah, everything has a time and place. I guess for some things it's shorter than others. You know, thinking about music history, like vinyls had a pretty long stretch.
Yep.
Compared to cassettes.
Yeah.
And then vinyls are like, vinyls have been around longer than they haven't been around. They went away for the period of time when there was cassettes and CDs, but I feel like the cassettes and CD era was short in comparison to vinyls.
Yeah.
In fact, is the vinyl industry? I actually don't know, but is it bigger now than it's ever been? Like,
I mean, it's hard for me to answer just because I wasn't alive like during the original heyday of it. But I think it.
There's definitely not as many places printing because I think there's only a small amount. Like Jack White's Third Man Records, I think is like one of the only record presses probably around. That being said.
Yeah, there are, I think more have opened up in the last 20 years. I do think that there was a time when, I just don't know. I would say that like when I was a kid, I didn't, you can find records on eBay and stuff and Discogs and all that. Is Discogs, is that where people buy records or is that just a credits list? I can't even remember.
Discogs?
Yeah.
Like discogs.com?
Yeah.
I've actually never gone to that. I don't know what that is.
I'm not much of a record collector. I have a couple records.
Yeah.
But the point I was trying to make was, like, I don't remember, or sorry, what I was trying to say was, there are records I've looked up on eBay or something like that, that albums that came out like in the mid 90s or something, or that will exist on vinyl. But as a kid, I didn't even know that. Like, I thought records were just no longer a thing. I didn't realize there was even. But there is stuff that was printed during all that time for sure. Where was I going with that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Records.
Fuck.
It's maybe vinyl is king. Maybe that's just it.
That's what we were saying. Yeah. So we were talking about. We're talking about records. Duh. No. I was saying that, so I think there has been a very large resurgence in vinyl in recent years. I mean, you can go into like a Target and buy records. When we were kids,
you can go to Barnes & Noble and buy records.
That wasn't a thing when I was a kid. I don't know if it was like that for you, but I remember going
I don't think that it was. I remember when I was in high school, and I grew up in Portland, like freaking hipster capital of America at that time too.
Yeah.
Growing up in Portland, the cool thing to do was like go to bookstores and record stores,
Yeah.
So definitely by the time I was in high school, people were interested in records.
Right. That's
so we're talking like 2008 to 2012, like,
right.
Wow, cool records. I want to go to a record store. I want to like browse through records. And it is a cool experience. It's
It's
totally different. And it's much different than scrolling through a platform like Spotify or iTunes. One thing that I think is so different in that music experience is when you look at a record, all that you have is what's in your hands and what's in your head. And what I mean by that is what's in your hands is kind of this unique experience. You're seeing the physical material, like what they chose to put on the cover, in the leaf, whatever's there, the photos, the lyrics. And then you have your knowledge about the band or your lack of knowledge. Like you pick up a record of somebody you've never heard. And, you know, it's just a void in your mind. Like, wow, I got to fill in this blank. What's this music? What does it sound like? You know, I got to go through this process to find out. Or you already know, and you're like, it's a band like Led Zeppelin, and you pick up a Led Zeppelin record, and there's so many associations in your mind about what to think about this. Now, you go on Spotify, and there's so many things competing for your attention, and it's all just a click away, and you can just bounce through songs. But the one thing that I think is really fascinating about Spotify is the fact that it lists how many streams there are.
Yeah.
And what's beginning to happen is stream inflation. Because it's happening on YouTube as well. 1 million streams just isn't what it used to be.
Yeah.
You know, we all remember the first video to get 1 billion streams on YouTube.
Sure.
I say we all, and now I'm like, was it Justin Bieber or was it Gangnam Style? I think it was Gangnam Style, right? Wasn't it Gangnam Style?
That probably tracks. Yeah.
It was something like that.
It's one of those. Yeah, sure.
And it was a big deal. I don't know what the first song was to get 1 billion streams on Spotify, but there are tons of songs on Spotify with over 1 billion streams.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't necessarily, it kind of means that you're top tier if you have a song with over 1 billion streams, but there's a girl, Gail, that artist Gail, who does the song ABCDEFU. That song has over 1 billion streams. And I saw her perform at the El Rey. And it wasn't even it was packed, but it wasn't a sold out show.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it? Like,
so you can have over 1 billion streams and not have a sold out show in a place that's a cap of like maybe 400 people.
Yeah, it is weird. I haven't been able to totally wrap my head around that too, but it always kind of throws me for a loop because I've had that experience too where I'm like, or I hear about these pop bands that have these like crazy stream numbers.
And
I'm just like, and then you look at videos of them or something and there's like no one there.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then not saying it's a bad thing because the I think the industry has changed a little bit and like, a big thing that I don't know too much about, but a big thing I think is like, bands getting on playlists on Spotify, and that brings in a lot of streams that, which makes sense because it's like people discover you through other things rather than just like hearing about you and looking it up.
But also too, is that playlist just being played at Starbucks every day?
Yeah.
Or is that song being intentionally listened to by a person? You know?
Yeah, I mean,
because I think that's the difference. Like people always talk about when they're talking about social media, they're talking about engagement.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's almost the most critical indicator for somebody's particular platform. Like, what's your engagement? Like, you might have all the followers in the world or all the streams, but are people actually listening? Are they commenting? Are they going to your tour? Are they going to your concert? Are they buying your stuff?
Yeah.
And I think that it's interesting because you and I are the same age, and we grew up in this period of time where like Instagram came out and Facebook came out. And I think it was so easy to be obsessed with numbers, obsessed with how many followers, how many likes, how many this.
Yeah.
And I think that we're actually getting to this point where it's actually very meaningless.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Like it's not completely meaningless because we're still going to like raise our eyebrows if you see, oh, wow, your track has 1 million plays. Wow. Like, Or if I had 1 million plays on one of my tracks, I'd feel amazing, regardless of whether or not that was real. I'd be like, wow,
right.
you know. But and so it does mean something psychologically, but I think it means a lot less than we give it credit for.
Well, yeah, and I think so. Like, I'm not really in the know as far as how, like, because people do make money as artists who have their music on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it's and the gamut is wide there. Like some pop artists probably make a considerable amount of money from Spotify, but there's a lot of people who are below that level.
Mm-hmm.
That's the funny thing. It's like, X amount of people listen to the song, but it's not like in the old days where it's like, X amount of CDs were sold and some profit was seen. But also, I don't know, like, I just don't know, like, how to be honest, like, I kind of stopped thinking about money as a DIY musician because there's kind of no point, because it's like,
I kind of want to look this up really fast.
Do it, yeah.
How much money does an artist make on Spotify per million streams? And I totally spelled some things wrong here. Thank goodness for autocorrect. Thank goodness for AI, right? Okay. On average, artists might earn between $3,000 to $5,000 for 1 million streams. But this is a rough estimate, and individual experiences may differ.
So, and here's the thing, though. It's like,
it's interesting.
Again, coming from what I'm curious about, too, is like that. Is that money going just for them, or is that because, like, if you look at what a band has to do now, right? Like, I mean, unless you're a big pop artist, like, there are labels that are still paying for music videos and content and PR and stuff for bands, but there's a lot of labels that can't afford to do that, which is fine to some degree. But like, if that number is based on just going to the artist, I mean, a music video could cost $5,000
easy,
and that's like
that's right, an indie music video,
right. And like, that's the thing is, though, like, for a lot of bands, that's like a lot of fucking money.
Yeah,
and like, so. I guess what I'm getting at is, like, I'm curious if that number is like that's what they make after all their other expenses are paid for.
Oh,
for an album cycle maybe, or if that's like, and what I mean by that is like, here's $5,000, but then the band has to be like, all right, well, we have to split that up over these things, and
totally. I think that's just straight up what Spotify's doling out. Yeah, what Spotify's paying, and then you're totally right. If you're in a band, there's probably going to be some splits based on, writers and credits and all that stuff. Producer. If there's a manager involved, the manager is going to be taking their chunk. If there's a record deal, then the record's going to be recouping.
Yeah.
And the record, it just depends on the deal.
Yeah,
they might be taking 100% until it's recouped. And so it's tricky.
It is tricky. And I feel kind of silly for like not knowing more about it, given that I've been like trying to play music seriously in some capacity for like the last, like 15, 20 years of my life. But honestly, like the type of music that I gravitated towards at an earlier age and have sort of like immersed myself in, like, making money is just not really why you do it, you know? It is like a labor of love, and it's not really in the picture. In my opinion, money should never be in the picture as a musician. And if like it happens, cool. But if you're going out to like make music to make money, like you're just kind of in it for the wrong reasons, you know? And I think that like, because me and like all the bandmates I've had over the years and like the friends I've had in the music scene over the years just kind of share that opinion to some degree.
Yeah.
Maybe not as we get older, as we get older and like bills matter more and things. Like it's definitely harder and harder to keep going out and doing it, knowing that you're not going to make much. But like the genre of music that I'm most interested in playing and have been most interested in playing, like it's not very lucrative, and I think I've just sort of trained my brain to not even worry about it and just focus on like writing music that I feel strongly about, that I would like to share with people, and just kind of doing it for the art of it.
Yeah.
And I sort of like, I get too depressed when I hear that like money can't be attained from it as easily, depending on the level of your band, that I just, ignorance is bliss kind of thing,
Yeah.
But I'm also not someone who's like touring constantly, like there's obviously bands that are, like my band does a couple tours a year, and we're just all kind of the mindset that it's like, we might make money from this tour and we might shell out a lot of money, but it means we're playing to more people and we're building up a following for what's realistic for the type of music we play. And
doing what you love too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to put a price on that.
Yeah, it's true. And like the feeling of writing music with your friends and getting on stage and just blacking out and just playing loud for like, however many people are there. Sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 100. And it's kind of all just worth it, because we're like, I don't know, I guess we're all just kind of in it for the power of like that moment, like it's worth it enough for us to just keep doing it, because, and at this point we just don't know, like music has just become like a friend to us, I'm getting sentimental now about music. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I think that when it comes to artistry, there's first off, I think there's a big difference between the artistic world and the commercial world.
Yeah.
And sometimes they intersect, sometimes they butt heads. I think what we're talking about here is the art.
Yeah.
And I think you're totally right. I don't think that you should get into art if you're looking for money, for a couple of reasons. For one, on a practical level, it's uncertain. But for two, that's not the motivating factor of making art.
Right.
It's, that's the motivating fact. If you want to make money, then getting into the commercial world, the business world, is exactly where you can be and should be. And yeah, that's just a different game. But art, I think, is something, it's sacred. It transcends any kind of monetary system. You're making something that is supposed to be shared with other humans, and it's supposed to connect. It's like, I mean, art is such a funny thing to talk about because there's so many ways that people describe it, define it, experience it. But one thing is for sure, when you see it, you know it when you see it. And because it moves you, it's evocative. It can bring you to tears. It can bring back these emotions. It can put you in a place spiritually, emotionally, physically.
Absolutely. And
there's this power to it.
Yeah. The thing you just said about like, you know it when you see it. I think sometimes it's depending on, I don't know. I think it's pretty easy to smell bullshit sometimes within art and music. Like, you can tell sometimes when someone's just doing it for the likes or like the money or like the image or whatever. And then you can tell when you go see a band, and I mean, especially in like the punk and hardcore scene, like I would say the majority of bands that do that kind of thing, it's like, it's anti like anti-image and anti-glamorous and like
a lot of things.
Yeah, oh, it is. But you know, like, but every now and again, you know, I can remember like growing up going to shows and you know, you see a band that is just kind of a little more like image based, right? And like and then you see a band that just gets up on stage and they don't, and you can just tell there's like this band doesn't care about anything except for these 20 minutes that they're just playing extremely loud for like 10 kids. And they don't care that there are 10 kids there. They just care about sharing the music and like making you feel like you're watching a band in a stadium.
Yeah.
But you're at some, you know, like disgusting house show. Right? And like,
yeah.
And those are honestly like, those are probably my favorite shows have all been like, obviously later in life, you know, and at the time I would still go to shows with like at proper venues for sure. And those are some of my favorite shows too. But thinking back, I'm like, my favorite shows that really made me want to continue pushing music were always the ones where you like, you get to the show, it's some band from like Indiana that you've never heard of, but like your friend booked the show and he says they're cool because he found them on MySpace and was like, these guys are going to be cool. They're touring, and I just asked if they would come to Vermont or whatever.
So sick.
And yeah, some of my favorite shows. I remember like a couple bands just watching and just being like, what is this band even doing? They're like blowing my mind right now. And a lot of that goes back to, I think, just doing it for the art and I'm rehashing the same thing 50 times here, but it's like seeing a band that really is doing it for the art of it, you can tell, and it moves you in ways that I think people that aren't doing it for those reasons, like I just don't feel as moved by that a lot of the time. But there's also nothing wrong with like compartmentalizing your push into art and music, I think, like, because the other unfortunate, like, realistic thing is, or the other unfortunate thing about playing music too is it is extremely hard and it's very hard to make money.
It's true.
I would say that
true.
A lot of it you could, you know, a lot of it is based on luck, you know, and in my opinion at least, and you know, I think it's totally fine, I think, to like, people probably get into the music industry and are like, I'm going to take this band I have really seriously for the art of it, but, you know, maybe I don't know, like, work in some other area of the music industry that actually pays. Yeah. Use that money to fund which when I was a kid, and like in high school and college and stuff, I was like, that's so lame. That's like diluting everything. And then I don't know, you get older and you're like, well, it would be nice to like, you know, have money to live and then have more money than I would have had if I had just made this my full-time thing.
Yeah. It was funny you say that. I had the same mindset that if I'm not the artist, then I don't want to be working in music in any other capacity because it's just going to drive me crazy. And honestly, I had to swallow my ego kind of about a year ago when I started working a lot in events. Because a lot of the events I started working in were music oriented. And suddenly I realized, like, dang, I've been missing out. Like, you know, my instinct was to do like the most typical thing, which is get a job as a bartender, get a job as a server, and then make all that money. And then in this tiny bit of spare time that you have when you're awake and you're not hungover and you're not tired to do the thing, you know, instead now I'm surrounded by these experiences and these people that are inspiring me because they're doing what I want to do or what I appreciate and what I love. And I'm getting paid to be here. And I'm also meeting people in that industry, in that world.
Yeah.
And it just hit me, wow, I wish that I had been doing this from the get-go. You know, like I spent all this time working in restaurants, and I had a great time and learned a lot working in restaurants. But what ended up happening was, after working in restaurants for so long, what do you think I got good at? I got good at working in restaurants.
Yeah.
And I didn't really further myself in the industry that I was trying to further myself in.
Sure.
And then as soon as I started working more closely with music and entertainment, you know, all of a sudden it's like, wow, I'm making a lot more connections and a lot more contacts with people in the industry that I have actually wanted to be a part of this whole time.
Yeah.
So, man, if I could give any advice to my younger self, looking back, I would say swallow your pride and just put yourself in the industry that you want to be in and be humble about it.
Yeah.
And take any job that you can.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, if that's the world that you're inspired by, you're going to feel filled up and you're going to feel energized.
Yeah.
And if
absolutely.
you're doing something just for a paycheck, you are going to have the life sucked out of you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Every day is just going to suck.
Yeah, I think
unless it's like super short-term basis and you're like, I'm doing this for 3 months for this particular goal. But guess what? Guess what happens? And you know, you've probably have heard this or seen this, but I know that you haven't been in LA that long.
Yeah.
But this is something I've witnessed in LA. There's a very classic phenomenon that people end up getting stuck in the service industry forever.
Yeah.
For years, 10 years, 15 years or more. And they all came here to be an actor or to be a musician or to be a dancer. And they couldn't walk away from the money. They couldn't walk away from making good tips at a restaurant. Or maybe it's part of it is the lifestyle or the fear, whatever it is. But
I mean,
they ended up becoming a professional server or bartender. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact,
not at all.
I think that's, you know, when I go to New York, that's one thing I appreciate about New York is that there's people who that is their thing. It's like they want to be a professional bartender and they want to be a professional server. And it's just this incredible experience of hospitality where you're getting the best of the best. And like they own that. Yeah. In LA, I feel like you get this, there's this jadedness, this bitterness, this resentment of people who are like, this isn't what I wanted to do, but this is what makes money. And
that's the thing too. It's like, you know, it all going for your artistic dream, whatever that might be. It all sounds great, and then there is a reality, and like, you know, fuck, I can't pay my bills this month. I don't have food. I'm eating like, you know, ramen noodles every night. Yeah, you know? And
starving artist.
Yeah, but
the reason why that's a
and there's no archetype. And I agree. I think I actually like I have a lot of friends in the service industry, and like it's cool to see them caring about it in a way where they're like, I want to one day open my own spot. And like
incredible.
I was like, as a kid, I like bus tables and stuff in like late high school for like 2 summers or something like that. And I always thought it would be cool to like open a restaurant. I never pursued that, and I never really pursued the service industry, but like it's cool seeing friends now who are like, you know, some of them, I don't know. I wonder if some of them in the beginning were like just kind of doing it to do it. As far as like, you know, bussing tables or like working as a bar back or something like that. Yeah. But a lot of them have gone on to, you know, like love the craft. And I used to live in Richmond, Virginia. Yeah. And that's everywhere. Like you'd be hard pressed to find a restaurant in town that is bad. Really? And it's just like, all of it is like these really passionate people who are wanting to stay in Richmond and maybe have like learned, I don't know, like culinary stuff from like a bigger city and come back and open their place, or like some people are born and bred there and have stayed there the whole time, but they're opening these places that are like fucking rad and like amazing food, and it's like, and they're young and they're just like, no, this is like, I'm not doing this just to like pay the bills. I'm doing this because I like want to do it, and that's pretty cool too.
And that's the difference.
Yeah,
like,
and that's it goes back to what we were saying. It's like, yes, they're making money from that, but also
that's what they want to be doing.
That's what they want to be doing, and I'm sure they probably have similar stories like, of. Yeah, this was like a lot to take on. I'm sure it's a pretty big financial commitment as well. And, but the satisfaction of like, this is what I love doing and I'm seeing it happen in front of me is like worth the struggle, But yeah, it is like.
I also have a theory too.
Yeah.
I have a theory that if you do the thing that you are excited about and you're into, even if it pays less money, you're probably going to excel at that.
Yeah.
You're probably going to bring a lot of joy to that work experience. And because of that, people are going to notice.
Yep.
And things are going to happen for you. Whereas if you work somewhere that you're not excited about, and let's just say, I mean, even if it pays a lot of money, if you're not excited about it, there's an expiration date hanging over your head. Like it's not going to last.
Yeah.
And I think that in the long run, if you just keep following that train of like, what excites me? What am I like, what is cool? And don't worry about, obviously you need like your bills got to get paid.
Yeah.
There's a certain level that you got to be considering. You got to know,
right.
You got to know what you need. But within that, I think like, if you follow that passion, I bet you, and this is just my theory, I'm still a young person. We'll see what I say when I'm like 80 years old.
Yeah,
but
it could all change, right?
My theory is that if you just keep on following that flow of energy of like, what is exciting? What am I going to wake up and be like, I'm stoked that I get to do this thing today, even if it doesn't pay a lot of money. I bet you in the long run, you'll be leaps and bounds ahead of the person who just like begrudgingly got up every day and did something that they hated.
Yeah.
Even if it had all the benefits in the world or all the money in the world, like
right.
You can't buy back the time.
Yeah, no,
can't buy back. You cannot. All the money in the world isn't going to buy your 20s back, or your 30s back, or your your life is happening right now.
Yeah,
so.
Sure, and it's definitely like, it's. What's the best way of saying this? It's not, and like not everyone is able to pull off the combination of the two, and it sucks for sure, but I think that there is like if you have the means of pulling off both, then it's definitely cool, but to be able to push both and hopefully make both a reality for yourself. But I don't know. Getting into a deeper discussion about that, I guess it's tricky for sure, because I've definitely, I mean,
it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, and there have been so many times where I'm like, I mean, like, I mean, I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, to pick up where I feel like you left off, you're right that it's tricky because nobody comes to this world the same.
Yeah.
We're born into different situations. We have different opportunities based on a myriad of factors.
Right.
And it's definitely easier said than done, because sometimes you have no options at all.
Yeah.
This is maybe not the best example, but I remember in high school, when I was in high school, the financial crisis had just happened, because I went into high school in 2009. And I remember trying to get jobs, and I just, everywhere I applied, and I grew up in a small town, and I couldn't get a job for a while. I remember wearing a tie and a dress shirt, walking into Burgerville at at least twice.
What is Burgerville?
Burgerville's like an Oregonian like burger joint, fast food joint. It's pretty good.
Sounds sick.
If you're ever in Oregon, go to Burgerville. Shout out.
Get me a one-way ticket to
Shout out,
Burgerville,
even
please.
though they didn't give me a job when I was 15 or 16.
What? Do you know why they didn't want to do it?
Dude, I have no idea, man. I walked in with a tie and a dress shirt, and I was like, "Hey, man, like I'm looking for a job." And eventually, actually, I think months later, they gave me a call back, and I got a job at like a senior citizens home as a server.
That's cool.
But you know, in that particular case, I didn't have options.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if I had not gone to college, if I for one, I was extraordinarily lucky to be Canadian, to be able to go back to Canada, to do my education up there.
Mm-hmm.
And also too, they just felt like there was more opportunity up there. But if I didn't go to college and I had stayed living in my hometown, I would have had very limited opportunities. You know, it wasn't like I could just pick between some super cool jobs. Like,
yeah,
I would have been
right. And that's the thing. It's tough too. Cause I mean that like college is fucking expensive, and like financial aid is not financial aid, but like, student debt is real.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing. I agree with what you're saying. Like, I think, for me, like, I mean, I know trust me, I know like plenty of people that didn't go to college and have very successful careers and have amazing life experiences that, you know, then they had a lot of those experiences by the time they were my age that I certainly haven't had, and or a lot of other people haven't had. But I think it's tough because I think going away to school or like being in a position that pushes you outside of like into the real world in some, not that, I mean, college is definitely a safety net, but like, I think it prepares you in some way socially for like the real world, you know, to some degree, arguably. But yeah, it's like getting out of your like, it sounds corny to be like getting out of your hometown, right? Like it does open a lot of doors, I think, for,
I think that's actually
like,
a really important step.
Exposing your mind to just a lot of different things and ways of thinking, and like
different people, different perspectives, different job markets.
Absolutely. And so it is like, the unfortunate part is that not everyone can afford to do it, which sucks because like, think about all the people that could benefit from that without even realizing it, in my opinion, you know? And like maybe people, I don't know if that's, but again, like so many people have very successful lives without going to that, without like going to college or something like that. And I don't know, we're getting into very territory here, but it's all related. I mean, I think it's, I think you can still make the argument that like, do what you love. Yeah. And like, if you have the means of like trying to like make it work within your life, like, I think it's important to nurture that and stay with it in whatever capacity, you know. Maybe it's like, I don't know. We've all done, like, we've all worked jobs over the years where it was like, well, I can, you know, this allows me to do this other thing I really like to do one day a week. So it's worth it right now.
Well, going back to doing what you love, we haven't even talked about the upcoming tour that you got coming up. And also, too, I'm really curious how you went from being, you know, the pro bono photographer, videographer to being part of the band.
Yeah,
like, when did that transition happen? How did that even come about?
Let's see. So in 2015, my band at the time played a show as part of this festival in Burlington. This like tiny little festival called Waking Windows. And one of the bands that was on the festival with us was this band called Au Revoir that one of the members of my band, Shiloh, also played in. they were playing. So this band Au revoir was playing with us.
Mm-hmm.
I met my friend Greg, who was a guitar player in that band, who also plays in Shiloh.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched each other play. And he found out I was moving to Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
Like very shortly after that. He's from Richmond.
Mm-hmm. And this was before or after you went on tour with them as their videographer?
This is before. This is about 2 years before.
Okay, got it.
So I moved to Virginia. Kind of started hanging out with him right away. He was like the first person I had met that lived there. And so he had seen me play guitar before, and I jammed with him and the other guitar player of Shiloh like a couple times when I first moved there. And it was a band that never ended up doing anything. I think we wrote like one song or two.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just all got busy, kind of lost touch. And probably shortly after I did the tour with them as a photographer and like filmmaker for them, their bass player, our friend Sean, left the band. And I had been playing music with one of the guitar players of Shiloh in another project that I have leading up. Sorry, this is kind of a confusing mess. So yeah, I had been playing. I have this other band called Earth Burial that's like a sort of thrashy like sludge metal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Myself and Zach from Shiloh were playing in this band together, and then after maybe a couple months in, I think the bass player at the time from Shiloh left the band, and they kind of looked at me and were like, "Do you want to join on bass?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be cool."
Nice.
So I hadn't actually played bass at that time. I was just a guitar player that was like, I'll be able to play bass.
Yeah.
In like with a guitar player's mindset. Like I don't have any formal bass training. Like it's laughable watching me try to play with my fingers. I always play with a pick.
Yeah.
And I would would like to learn how to play with fingers properly and be a real bass player. But yeah, so that's kind of how that came about. And then so that was January of 2019, and then just been playing with them since.
Wow. So you went to Europe on that one tour for 3 weeks. Have you done a tour since that European one?
A European tour or just in general?
Just in general.
Yeah, we've done a couple. Trying to think. So we did the last tour I did with the band was about a little over a year ago. We went back to Europe.
Nice.
We've done I think we've done a couple small US runs in between that. The band's been to Europe. Weirdly, we've been to Europe more in the last few years than we have in the US. A lot of that is because of what we talked about earlier, with there being a little bit more of an appreciation for what we do, it seems there. There's in my opinion, this is something that maybe not everyone agrees with that listens to this type of music, but it seems like there's a little bit of a resurgence in post-rock in the US right now. There's starting to be, but I think in the US it was very much a little bit larger as like a subgenre of music around like, I don't know, 2008 to 2014 seems like a big time for it. But it seems to be still kind of going strong as a subgenre in Europe, way more than the US. Why that is, I don't know. But I think a lot of it has to do with it being instrumental music.
Yeah.
And again, to be argued.
This upcoming tour that you have, it's a US tour, right?
It is.
And how many dates?
I think it's like 32.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty substantial. So are you going to be on the road for 2 months? 3 months?
See. It's the first day is February 7th, I believe, and then it ends on March 10th. So it's a full US.
That's a fast timeline. That's basically just a month, man.
Yeah. And there's
Wow.
I'm forgetting all the specific dates right now, but there's probably a day off here and there.
But you guys are pretty much playing every day. You
Mhm.
got to be if you're doing 32 dates in just about a month.
Something like that. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
it should be cool. It's
What city are you most excited to play?
ooh. I think I am most excited to play Boston.
Why Boston?
And I think for the type of music that we play and like this tour package, we're a support tour for this band called The Ocean and a band called The World Is a Beautiful Place, and I'm no longer afraid to die.
Nice.
There's the Northeast is a very strong fan base for the type of music that they play, and by proxy, what we play. A lot of similar sounding music has come out of that area.
Yeah.
So fan base is strong there, which probably means the turnout will be good. I would say Boston, Chicago will probably be pretty good. I think there's a Chicago date. My brain's kind of been fried recently for many reasons.
Yeah. Where are you playing in Boston? Do you know the venue?
God, I'm forgetting already.
Is it the Middle East? Actually, is
Can
the
I
Middle
look?
East even around?
The Middle East is around.
It's still around?
Can we look it up?
Let's-
This is really embarrassing
let's
for anyone watching this. It's in. It might be the Middle East or
Middle East,
Look up-
Boston.
here. You know what? I have a better.
I want to make sure that this place is still closes soon. Okay, that's just because. Okay, sweet. It's still running.
Yeah.
Up running. The Middle East is epic, legendary.
I think I've been to the Middle East. There's a couple of venues I've been there that look up the Ocean Collective.
Oh, Ocean Collective.
Look up the Ocean
Not
Collective.
this song dates. Shiloh, tour
Actually,
dates,
click
2024.
that. Click that. It'll be there.
This looks promising.
Yeah.
Cookies.
see.
Does this sound about right? Baltimore,
Yep.
Philadelphia, New York.
That's right.
Super sick, man.
What is the Boston? Middle East.
Cambridge.
That is.
It is the Middle East.
Yep.
Sick. And
Yeah.
you guys are playing downstairs. Dude, that's
Yeah.
tight.
I think I have been to the Middle East, but it's
Oh, you guys are playing in Montreal?
yep. Montreal and Toronto. Toronto and Montreal should be fun. Those are
Dude.
pretty fun places for us to play.
You guys are playing Hamtramck.
You been there?
I used to live really close to Hamtramck. I used to live in Detroit. You're playing at the
Oh, yeah.
Sanctuary. Huh. Okay.
I've heard about the Sanctuary. Yeah, it's funny. Like a lot of these venues are places I've heard about for so long and have never.
Reggie's Rock Club.
Yeah.
It's going to be an epic tour, man.
Yeah, it should be good.
Denver, Salt Lake, Star. I don't know the Star Theater in Portland. Seattle. Do you have any California dates?
There
Or
is.
not California, like LA?
Yeah, Highland Park at the Lodge Room.
Oh, dude.
February 28th.
Sick.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll have to come through, man, if
should
I'm
be cool.
down.
Yeah, the Lodge Room is great.
Um,
I went to a show there for the first time recently. Loved it.
Arizona, San Diego. Damn, you guys end in Texas.
No, we end in
yeah, it
Orlando,
keeps
actually.
going.
Yeah.
New Orleans. Dude, this is
I don't know
epic.
what
UK.
those are. Oh yeah, we are doing. That's way later in the year. We are doing that though. Yeah,
So sick.
yeah. Arctangent is this.
Did you know your New Orleans gig got canceled?
Yeah,
What happened?
I think they're just moving it to a different venue. Or maybe
Okay.
it did get canceled. There's a lot of like. I'm gonna be honest. So recently, I've been a lot of the recent weeks in prep for this tour have been all about logistics and outside of like. Because we don't have, as a support for this tour, we don't have like say over the routing. You know, that's all put
Right.
together with the headliner's
Yeah.
agent and everything, and the headliner themselves.
Yeah.
And
Who
so-
picked you? Did the headliners pick you, or did like their label or their management?
So the headliner picked us. So it's cool because so we're on a label in a German-based label called Pelagic Records.
Mm.
And the owner of the label plays in this band called The Ocean that is the headliner on the tour.
Oh, sweet.
So we've been
Very tight knit.
yeah, we've been buds with them since we
Yeah.
signed to them, and they were like, we're doing a full US. Do you guys want to be support? Which is really cool. And we're really thankful for the opportunity because we've been wanting to do a support tour for a bigger band for some time. And
that's cool.
It's the biggest tour that we've done as a band. So
nice.
It'll be a fun time.
So when you guys do a support tour, or just when a band does a support tour, do they have any kind of funding from their label, or is it pretty much like you got to figure out how you are going to fund it on the front end of things?
Yeah.
And then the hope is you sell your merch along the way to recoup costs. That's pretty much it?
Yeah. It's completely out of pocket for us, to be honest.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is being, this tour for us has been, the prep has been financially difficult.
Yeah.
But the hope is that we'll make, honestly, like, we can be happy making breaking even.
Yeah.
And that's all we can really expect because it's, we're playing to bigger crowds every night on this tour, but there's a good chance that a lot of people still won't know who we are.
Yeah.
So, it puts a fire under our ass to like play a really good show. So play a really good show so that hopefully people do buy merch, because that is like how we will make money. But it's an
interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, it is like everything that we've done for this tour is coming out of pocket. Like, and that, we had a van for a while. That was also one of our guys' daily drivers. And he ended up selling that in the last few years.
Yeah.
So we're renting a van for the whole time, which is a lot. And then, you factor in gas, you factor in what we had to pay designers to design merch for us, the cost of printing the merch.
Yeah.
And then the cost of like, okay, well, we'll probably have to do some like rush shipments along the tour to like do like re-ups on merch.
Yeah.
If for some reason, hopefully we sell out of the first batch that we have, like we need to have enough to last the whole tour. So yeah, it's definitely tough, but again, it's like, where we're kind of at as a band is like, we have done a lot of DIY touring over the career of the band, and a lot of us have, where we just kind of, we're kind of going out as the headliner.
Yeah.
Which, you still have to get your awareness out, and you have to like tour to still be relevant and be on people's minds and like spread the word about your band. It's still like, it's still a valuable tool. I think there's a lot of value in online marketing and Spotify and music videos and all that stuff, but touring is just as important in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of DIY touring, but we've sort of recently, I think, had the realization like, okay, maybe it's like, we could maybe make a little bit more money in Europe, for example, being a headliner. But the downside of that is that because we're not a very well-known band, like a lot of people might not be out at the show. So, we love playing these intimate shows. And like I was saying earlier, like some of my favorite shows as a showgoer were those kind of like very intimate, no one's in the room, but you're like lucky to see this cool band.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we're a cool band because some people might think we suck.
You guys are a cool band. I think you
thanks.
guys are cool.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it's we kind of just reached a point where we're like, we might not make a lot of money on this tour because we're a support act, but the flip side of that is that we'll play to much larger audiences every night, which in turn
it's an investment in the future.
Exactly. It'll hopefully grow the fan base.
Yeah.
And hopefully, again, going to the money side of things, which is a realistic thing because we've put in a lot of fucking money to just go out and do this, and it's all self-funded.
Yeah.
And we all have gone broke over it, which hasn't really been the most helpful thing for me this year, because I also work in film, and the film strike has been crushing, like very crushing.
Yeah.
And to be trying to be in a DIY band at the same time is kind of hilarious. And I think most people would be like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And that's been hard. Anyway,
It's for the love, man. It's for the art.
Yeah, it's what was I saying? It's lost my train of thought because I ramble.
It's been hard. There's the strike, going broke over.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. So we just decided that, you know, it's worth it to do a support tour. We're not going to make that much money because for the band's sake and growth.
Yeah.
It, like you said, it's an investment for the future. And who knows? I mean, it's all, I think a lot of the music industry is luck, but the feeling of, not in an egotistical way at all, but the feeling of like getting to share your music with more people and like see a project grow that we have put so much time into. Like the band has existed for 12 years now.
Yeah.
And I've only been in for a couple of those years, but you know, it feels cool to be able to do a support tour that with bigger bands that have a larger following, and we're very just thankful that they've offered to bring us into that and give us this experience, because you know, we're eager to, like, you know, just grow the band and fan base in a different way, and it'll be fun to do like a support tour in the US with bands that are kind of in our genre too.
Yeah.
And just experience all of that. So,
well, dude, I'm excited for you, man.
Thanks, man.
Even just looking at those dates, I got excited. Like, touring is one of my favorite things in the world. It's such an incredible experience. So I'm a little jealous of you guys. It's going to be a pretty awesome, fun time. And I hope that I can see you guys.
Dude, come on out. Yeah.
A show or two.
Yeah. Well,
so
come out to the Lodge Room. It'd be cool to have you out.
The Lodge Room is such a vibe.
It is a really cool place. Yeah. I went to a very good show there recently.
Who'd you see?
Full of Hell.
Don't know them.
Yeah. They're crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like
hardcore band.
Yeah, I guess so. You could call them that. It's like, not to get all like genre specific and dorky about it, but they're kind of like a grindy, like power violence type.
Power violence. It's just
okay. Yeah, there's not even a lot of bands like that specifically that I listen to, but seeing them live is insane. They're very, very good, and
I'll have to check them out.
Yeah, it's worth listening to. But it was they were headlining with a band called Wake and a band called Inner Arma that is from Richmond.
Yeah.
And a buddy's band who actually, one of the guitar players is recording the new Shiloh record right now. He plays in this band called End. That is just like a gross, fast kind of metal hardcore thing.
Sick.
Very good. Very fun show. Yeah.
Man. Well, Lodge Room, February 28th.
Yes.
I think,
right? I know my own tour dates, right? And locations. It's fine.
Oh man. Well, before we wrap it up, do you have any like tips or tricks when it comes to DIY touring?
Oh man.
Or even just being in a DIY band?
Sure. I probably have a lot.
Let's hear it, man.
Touring. Eat well on tour and take care of your body on tour.
Dang, easier said than done.
It is easier said than done. You know what? I'm going to take that back because you're right. It's really hard. What I mean by eat well is like,
don't get fucked up every single night.
You know what? I'm going to take all that back. I kind of can't believe I said that, to be honest, because like,
are your band members going to be like, dude, what are you talking about?
I'll say this. This is, you know what? Let's cut that out because here I'm gonna redo this question. Eating well,
oh man,
eating well if you're starting out on tour is impossible.
Okay.
But I think there are ways that you can eat slightly healthier as
Mhm.
you're starting out. But yeah, you don't have a lot of money. So it's like Taco Bell is usually the move. But however, there are other things like Chipotle. Chipotle is way healthier than Taco Bell, depending on how you look at it.
I would think so.
It's more expensive for sure.
But
But
I don't know if they do this anymore, but you used to get free burritos if
Right.
you're a band on tour.
I missed that, unfortunately. I don't know if they do it anymore either.
You guys should try.
I'll try again.
You guys should see if they still do it.
Yeah, that was.
Here's what you do.
Yeah.
You got to call them beforehand. You call them. You call the location. You ask to speak to the manager, and you say, "Hey,
Yeah.
my band's on tour right now. We're coming to the town, and we're just wondering if you'd be able to like comp us a few burritos, just like for me and the crew, me and the team."
We can bring it back.
Dude,
Yeah,
see
it
what
might
happens,
it might
man.
be like I'm sure the Shiloh guys have probably done it before, and I remember
Yeah.
hearing about that, but it was before I had really started touring.
Yeah.
What I will say is, if you, it sounds very boring. These tips sound boring, but like, try to get sleep. Try to not be hungover all the time, unless you want to drink, which is cool. But it's like, touring is really fun, but it is still a job. Like, there are days where, like the last tour we did, and those tips that I just gave are also really hard to do too. You know, like the last tour we did in Europe, or one of the last ones we did in Europe, our drives were crazy. It was like somewhere we did a drive that was 20 hours in like a day and a half.
Dude, that is gnarly.
Yeah, and then a lot of the drives
That's
were
a
like
lot of sitting.
were like 7-hour drives for most of the tour.
Wow.
And we weren't support. We were headlining these. I shouldn't say headlining, but because it wasn't like it was a big tour or anything like that. But we were playing last.
Mm-hmm.
So like by the time we'd pack up, it would be like 1 a.m, and then
Mhm.
we'd have to leave the next day at like 7:30.
Wow.
So it's like
Yeah.
that, and it doesn't sound that bad because it's like, oh, it's fun, and touring is totally fun. But like,
Yeah.
whatever you can do to maintain your sanity is very good.
Yeah.
You know, like I think take advantage of like trying to get some alone time when you can, you know, in the van, like throw on a podcast, throw on your headphones, just like be in your world for a bit if you benefit from that.
Yeah.
I know I do
Yeah.
sometimes. Probably my bandmates are probably like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is like, there's all like things I'm thinking about now, but there's a lot of it,
Yeah.
but it's tough. I mean, like, cause you are like, if you're in a van, like a lot of times you're sleeping in the van.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, you know, sleeping on the floor of the van with like
Yeah.
5 of the dudes in the middle of the summer, and the AC is broken and you guys smell like shit and you're all sweating and like, but it's all fun. let me rethink about these tour tips.
No,
though.
I
mean,
think
like,
I think that those are good pieces of advice, though.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever you do something that totally augments your schedule
yeah,
and you can't live your life like your normal life,
yeah,
it is going to be hard to sustain those healthy practices that you might normally have.
yeah,
And over a long period of time, it's going to catch up to you.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think that taking the opportunities, like if you have the opportunity to eat a healthy meal, do it.
Take that. Maybe that's a better way
Because
of putting it, because
You're
it's
probably going to get the pizza the next time and the next time and the next time and the next time. So, like,
like, yeah,
take the opportunities when you can. If you
Right.
have the opportunity to get some sleep,
Yeah.
take it.
yeah,
Because-
right. And I think that's probably a better way of thank you for
Just-
channeling that correct tip. That's
what
probably
I'm
a better
here
way to
for.
do it. Yeah, like doing it if you have the opportunity, like do so. And I know it's a super boring answer, because if I was like 23 on tour, I probably wouldn't say that because it's just not something I think about. But this is coming from someone who's a little bit older now. Like, your body gets run down quickly.
Yeah,
in
and
your-
you don't want to get sick.
No, getting sick on tour.
It's one thing to be run
absolutely
down.
sucks.
It's another thing to be sick.
Yeah, because you're in this cramped van. You're probably all gonna get sick.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. But I don't know. The other tip I would have on a more positive note, I guess, and a more fun note is like try to cherish the moments and
Take lots of pictures.
yeah. I mean, yeah, to some degree, like try to cherish
Yeah.
it and keep in mind that like if you want to do it, like embrace like the luxury of the moment and like try to remember, like you're in a van with people, like you're probably going to get on each other's nerves. Try to just remember why you're doing this and where you are, and like just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Like many times looking back on it, and like I think this is the case for every band. I'd be hard pressed. I think you'd be hard pressed to find that like there's not a band that argues every now and again in the van or something like that. But we get in arguments all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just like you're cooped up in this moving house for like 30 days or something like that. It happens, but
Yeah.
try to remember like you're getting to play music and make art with your friends and share it with people. And,
Yeah.
You might not be able to do that in the future for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
And take advantage of like all the memories and all the opportunities to meet people and, try to be social if that's your thing. And,
Yeah. 100%.
I don't know. It's some of my core memories and like favorite memories are like being in these tough conditions, but again, it's like you do it for the fun of it, and like I wouldn't trade it for anything,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good place to leave it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I probably rambled
No, man.
way too much.
It was great.
There are things I regret framing in certain ways, but I said it, so you can edit it now. If you want
man,
to,
this is all part of the flow of the conversation, man.
Sick.
And I think it was awesome. I think it's interesting to hear your story, your perspective, and I think that it's an important perspective to hear for anybody who's involved in music and wanting to tour, and the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah,
it's not just one thing; it's the whole gamut.
Right.
You get it all.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's an important. It's important to just face that reality head on. So
yeah.
But Drew, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. Where can people find your socials, your music, your band? What links? What should they look up?
Sure. We're on Spotify, Instagram. We are in Bandcamp if people still use that.
And what should people type in?
The band is called Shiloh. It's spelled not how you would think. It's spelled SHY, LOW. And another band that I'm in that isn't as active but is still a band is called Earth Burial. And you can find us on all of those platforms as well.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Well, I'll put all those links in the description, and I'm super excited for this tour.
Did you get to do in the description, like right here?
That's thing? Right.
I'm
in
gonna put
description.
it. I'm gonna put it like.
I actually haven't even done that yet.
Right? I'm just kidding.
Subscribe, click, bing. I haven't done any of that yet. That's next level. I'm still learning, man.
Well, now you can.
Maybe this will be the first one.
Dude, I bet there's an AI tool for
subscribe.
Doing that.
What's the other one? Like,
subscribe. Is there an AI like subscribe placement tool yet?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Oh, you know what? Maybe there's only certain places in the screen. It's corners though. So as long as I'm hitting a corner, so
corners.
Subscribe, like. What's the other one? Oh, notifications. Notifications. Right. All right, we'll see if that worked. But Drew, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. Looking forward to watching your tour unfold.
Dude.
And until next time, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on, and it's cool to talk about music with another musician. So
hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks
man.
for having me.
Have a good night, dude.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Spring Street Podcast. If you'd like to support the show, sign up for the Patreon to receive exclusive behind-the-scenes content and check out the sponsor links in the description.